Hello, everyone. Thanks for clicking and tuning into this little discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about solar investing, or what some of you might know as 12B, or don't know, but will know soon enough. My name is Andrea. I'm a financial advisor here at Wealth Associates. I'll be chatting to Moritz, who will do a quick intro on himself soon. And yeah, we're just going to delve straight in and see what solar investing is all about. Thanks, Mo.
Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, I'm Moritz. I'm a director with Wealth Associates, and I'm looking forward to the chat today. So, I think as an introduction, solar investing started with the green roots around the world, but got its footprint more in South Africa as a result of what's currently going on with our electricity concerns.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, lack thereof. I mean, as we're currently recording this podcast, we've lost power. So thank goodness for inverters. I think the biggest thing that has transpired since then is we've had 3 steps to get to where we are today. The first step is folks started to invest in solar for their homes and their businesses now. We started to move over to different kinds of investing in terms of rent to buy contracts. And it's fast moving into the traditional form of investing, and I think that's what we need to talk about today.
So just to be clear, when we say solar investing, it's not investing in your own solar panels and batteries. I mean, this is a specific tool or product, if you want to put it into that, where you investing money in, but you're not essentially getting the hardware yourself.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So a lot of people, if you're around the briar, in inverted commas, will talk about investing in solar, but they're actually putting panels on their roofs to be able to get through load shedding, and then that's absolutely fine. The biggest thing folk need to worry about there, if they really talk about investing, is that it doesn't really, in the traditional sense, add huge value to a house, but it does enable you to potentially sell your house at the market value a lot easier down the line. So I think we need to remove that, you're right, from the discussion, is that that's not really investing in the traditional sense. The investing we're talking about is if you want to be able to take up an alternative investment and potentially diversify your portfolio.
And you said it's really coming to the mainstream now. What are sort of the points that would make you hesitate? I mean, what should we be careful of now that it's become mainstream? Should everyone just be throwing their money into it, or what are the pros and cons there?
So it comes down to 2 things: behavioral finance and structuring. So behavioral finance talks about, in very simple terms, how people react to certain things in terms of money and investing, and how they think about stuff. And people generally are looking for either quick fixes or feel goods. It happened with crypto, where people started to pile into things that they potentially didn't fully grasp, or the impacts of what could certainly happen in those markets. And it's important just to make sure that if you do invest into any of these things, that you do it in a considered manner, and it's part of an overall plan. The second thing, which is structuring, is understanding how you're going to invest into solar. What will happen with any kind of new trend, and believe me, this will be a trend this year. With any new trend, there will be people, first of all, that jump on with different kinds of schemes that are not all times legal or legitimate, or might be, but they haven't been structured properly. So any good investment will have a look at those 2 factors in terms of an investor's ability to take risk and their willingness to take risk.
So essentially, everyone should do either their own due diligence in quite an extreme way, or chat to a professional before making any rash decisions. Don't move your retirement funds, or don't bet the bank on solar investing.
Don't take your kids' school fees next year and put it into solar investing to make a quick buck. And
so, I mean, what are the benefits to doing it, other than hopefully a good return at the end of the day?
Yeah, so I think one needs to look at it like we did with private equity structures within Section 12J of the Tax Act. So for those that don't know, Section 12J of the Tax Act allowed investors to invest in private equity and deduct it from their tax for a period of time. SARS allowed it until June 2021, which is referred to as a sunset clause. That segues into how we would probably look at it, if at all, for solar investing, because solar investing in itself should and will be structured primarily as private equity, which means that it's not listed on any stock exchange, which then therefore infers a higher risk already. And when you structuring it into a certain product, it infers a higher risk return metric in terms of the diversification of that product. So to put it in simple terms, if you were to invest in solar, I would consider it under 12B of the Tax Act. So 12B has been around, I think, for 7 years already. It hasn't been really utilized because the structures haven't been around. There haven't been any real market makers in terms of bringing these vehicles to the fore, but they are starting to come through now. So the first 12B fund has already started. It's already raising quite a lot of capital. And again, there you will need to look at, if you want to invest according to 12B, which fund makes sense, what carries the least risk for the highest return, understand things like costs and all the different elements. The biggest benefit outside of investing in actual private equity in solar, which carries its own risks, would be the tax deductions. So under 12B of the Tax Act, if the underlying fund meets all the requirements, you can deduct your investment for tax purposes. It's not quite that simple because obviously there's things like capital gains and so forth that comes through later down the line. And there will also be liquidity requirements because in private equity, it's not like having a share or a unit trust where you can just go and buy and sell as you want. There are liquidity constraints in terms of you have to be invested for a period of time to get that, first of all, tax deduction. But within the investment itself, then you might be stuck for 5 to 7 years or even longer. And therefore, it needs to be part of your long-term planning, not just a quick tax deduction or a quick buck for solar investment.
Awesome. So the tax deduction could also be seen as like a capital. I mean, your capital can only drop as low as your tax deduction. So it's a bit of a safety net there.
Exactly. So if it's a quick one on return, the way you measure the return in these kinds of structures is you look at what's called IRR, or internal rate of return. It's made up of 3 things in general. The first one is your tax deduction. So if you're in the maximum tax bracket and you're in for, let's say, 5 years, you know, over that 5-year period, you're getting in the first year 45% tax break, which is a return. So you're getting 45% over 5 years upfront as part of your IRR. The second one is any distribution. So generally in private equity, you'll get dividends once or twice a year, and that could be 4 to 6% per year. And then the third return, which is the most risky, is any capital return, because obviously when you sell at the end of the day, it will be willing buyer, willing seller in terms of private equity, unless there's guarantees in place or a specific market maker in place. And that would then add or detract from the return. So, but to your point, yes, even the worst case scenario in any kind of product like this is if your capital goes to zero. At the least, you would have had your tax break, which is just under half your investment. And then if it went to zero, let's say on year 4, but you got dividends, then you would have perhaps had 60%. Best case scenario, you get the 45%, you get your dividends every year, and you get a little bit of capital return at the end of the day, which is where private equity gets to the sort of 15 to 20% internal rate of returns that are out there. But again, it's also why, as advisors, we generally don't look at this for some investors. And when we do, it's not more than generally 5 or 10% of their portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, segueing off that, who would be the kind of person that should be looking at this?
Yeah, so if you look at a minimum investment with 12J, the absolute minimum you could get into a product like this was about 100,000 Rand. It means that at 5%, you need to have investable assets of at least 2 million Rand. If you, on top of that, you need to have the ability to take that risk. So in other words, if you're retired and you have 2 million rand, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily do that. But if you're in your growth phase, your wealth creation phase, still you're working, you're building capital, that's fine if you've got the investable assets. Also high net worth individuals, foreign investors, yeah. So it comes down, well, as always, to can the person afford to take that risk, and how, from a behavioral point of view, would they be in terms of taking that risk. It's no use if you can take the risk that you're going to have a heart attack if the thing does come down. You need to be able to be okay with capital risk. Yeah, I think that answers your question, Andre.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. I think that pretty much answers from a high level all the questions there are to it.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. I think that brings us to the end of this podcast. Thanks for the chat, and yeah, we'll do another one soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Andrea.
Cheers.
Bye.